My name is Zipporah, and I'm not sensitive, I'm just vibing. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about voting. Canada has recently gone through their election season, and it has been interesting to observe from an outsider perspective, especially since a big influence on how their elections are going has been the Trump trade war. As you can guess, these past few months for our neighbors up north have been a bit tumultuous to say the least. A small outline of events. Since February 1st, President Trump imposed 25% tariffs on most Canadian goods and 10% on gas, oil, and fertilizer potassium, known as potash. That took effect on April 3rd. The Canadian government retaliated, as is their right and honestly the most expected reaction. And now, for better or worse, we're in a trade war with our kindest neighbors, and our president has got them a bit miffed. So, Canadian citizens do as any would and look to their leaders for solutions. As a lover of Canadians, their immaculate vibes, and amazing maple syrup, I'm a supporter of their elbows lifting up against the adversity of my government. A lot of those elbows would be at polling stations this week, ready to elect the next Prime Minister. Now, hockey isn't quite my thing, so I'll get back to what I'm good at, and that is talking about the intricacies of our political system. Let's get into it. We're not sensitive, we're just voters. So, you are an adult member of your society. You can have a job, buy most if not all legal services available, and you can vote for the leaders of the city, state, and country. All very exciting things that signify to yourself and others that you are old enough to participate in your society, and voting is the most important thing you can do. In my last episode, I'm not sensitive, just a citizen. I mentioned the social contract between citizens and their government, which is the idea that a government and its officials are legitimized by the general will of the people. To put it simply, our government is only our government because we agree that it is, and we will follow the laws set by that government as long as we keep benefiting from those rules. Otherwise, theoretically, the government will lose its power. Voting is one of the few ways that citizens can fulfill their end of the contract while also refining that contract to advantage themselves and their communities. Voting allows you to support the people who will ultimately represent you when the government is breaking their part of the social contract. Imagine you and a large part of your community believes that you are all paying too much in taxes. So you'll go to the community representative and ask them why you're paying so much. What this representative does is listen and explain why you might be paying so much. If the community doesn't agree on the reasons for such high taxation, it's the responsibility of your representative to work out a way to lower those taxes. Now, that might mean the city won't be snowplowed over the winter, or school lunches will be a bit lackluster in the upcoming year. We vote for our own good and for public good, and the more of us that make our voices heard, the better our communities end up. Now, this is a very basic example of how voting is supposed to be. Different countries, states, and cities have their own systems and rules, and it changes the story. Full disclosure, I am going to stick to the US systems because globally, things get wildly complicated and I would be talking forever. But even here, there's more nuance than most people realize. The Fair Vote organization breaks it down into 3 main categories, each with pros and cons and real-world examples. First, we got the plurality majority systems. Winner takes all is the motto here. These systems favor top vote getter, often leaving minority voices unheard. Subtypes include first past the post, also called FPTP, the simplest form with the highest vote counts, even if it's just 30% in a crowded race. Used for most US federal and state elections, Critics say it leads to a spoiler effect, so third parties splitting votes, and it leaves many voters underrepresented. Runoff elections happen if no one hits majority. The top candidates face off in the second round, used in the Georgia primaries and some mayoral races. More democratic, but are costly and can lower turnout. Then there's ranked choice voting under the plurality majority systems. Voters rank candidates by preference. If no one wins outright, the lowest ranked candidate is eliminated and votes redistributed until someone hits majority. Alaska and Maine use it statewide. It reduces polarization and it gives third parties a shot without being spoilers. The second system we have is proportional representation. Proportional representation matches seats to vote share. So if a party gets 20% of the vote, they get 20% of the power. This is common in the EU, but rare in the US, except in some local experiments. Following the subtypes, party list proportional representation, voters pick a party, not a candidate, and seats are filled from the party's pre-made list, used in some city councils like Cambridge, Massachusetts. Mixed member proportional representation is a hybrid system where some seats are elected via first past the post and others via party list to balance local and proportional representation. Germany and New Zealand use this, but the US doesn't, yet at least. And the last system is semi-proportional. The last systems are semi-proportional. These try to split the difference between winner takes all and full PR. Some examples are cumulative voting. Voters get multiple votes to distribute however they want. Examples such as all 3 votes to one candidate gives minority groups a louder voice, used in some school board elections. And you've got limited voting. They're similar, but voters have fewer votes than seats. For example, we've got 2 votes for a 4-seat race. Pennsylvania's county commissions sometimes use this. The US mostly clings to first past the post systems, but reformers argue systems like ranked choice voting or proportional representation could reduce polarization, boost turnout, and make elections fairer. Meanwhile, critics say complexity could confuse voters. Either way, it's a debate worth having because how we vote shapes who gets the power. Lately, I've been seeing some negative sentiment towards those who don't vote, and I don't mean kids who can't vote, but people who specifically did not vote in the last US presidential election. With the abundance of controversy that has come from the Trump presidency, fingers are starting to point. In my opinion, it's not practical nor productive to look back and blame, while we could be looking forward and encouraging. What we know is that there are a lot of people who didn't vote in the last election. So, we should ask why. There are 3 reasons that I can see. First, my vote won't matter in the grand scheme of things. Some people may believe that because of gerrymandering or living in areas where large parts of the population are voting for the opposition. Second, the person I'm voting for is going to win anyways. If you live in an area that keeps you trapped in a social bubble where people around you believe in the same things as you do, it can be hard to remember that people are drastically different and will be voting in dramatically different ways. Third, I'm too scared to vote for the wrong person. There have been a few instances where people vote too differently from their families or friends and they become outcast from those groups, which can be painful. I'm not sure why the non-voting bloc did not vote, but What I do know is that we can give more than valid reasons to get to the polls. What I like to remember is the fact that I can vote is the very reason why I should vote, because it's a lot harder to fight for that right. Today, we talked a lot about national elections, and even though they are important, the elections that will impact your life the most are the local elections. Practice your right to vote by voting for those in your city council, your mayor, your state representatives. Get your friends, family together and talk about who you guys are voting for and why. Have tough conversations with your community so that you can make it better for all. Elections are happening in your community multiple times throughout the year, so make it a priority to pay attention, organize, and talk. Finally, I'd like to send a hearty good luck to the Canadians voting this week, especially to the first-time voters. Thank you for listening to me this week, and remember, we're not sensitive, we're just voters.